Okay, we're basically focusing on the issue of the creation and the creator. And that means that we have a reciprocal relationship with Hashem, which means that Hashem is not just giving us, he's also expecting back from us, so that it's a give and take relationship. And that's what Hashem wants. As we talked about the idea that, it's a priorvu and Sheves Barua, that Hashem wants us to be partners with him in creating the world. And this has many, many facets to it, and many aspects to what makes that possible, and what are the different ways that comes out in terms of expression, and what it obligates us to, in a sense, and especially us as Yidden, as Jews, is an extra dimension. This includes really all of creation, but particularly the Jewish people, and in some very special ways. So we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff. That kind of is the basis of what we were talking about. Then we did enter into the issue of the Eitz Hadas, exactly what was involved there, and what is the bearing of that on what we're talking about here. One of the Nekudahs there, one of the major points was that Adam and Chava were created on such a high level that they were viewed by the rest of creation as being creators, as being a creator, to the point where they were bowing down to them. And there was this Medrash that all the creations came to, even the Malachim, came to Adam and wanted to bow down to him. And he said, let's all go together and bow down to Hashem. He's the real creator. So he acknowledged he wasn't the real creator. But we talked about the idea that one of the major reasons for the sin itself, why did they eat from the tree? Why would they do something like that? Discuss the idea that because they wanted to go to the top, so to speak, they wanted to go the extra mile and go to the very highest possible level they could get to. And the Nachash, the snake, was telling them that this is an opportunity to be able to, if you eat from this fruit, you'll be able to create worlds. So you'll be able to be a creator yourselves. And this was very attractive to them, to the point where perhaps through various different explanations of it, they had an idea that they were going to be able to serve Hashem better through doing that, even by going against Hashem's command. In any case, that's what they did. And the problem was that, as it says, that by eating from the Eitz Hadas, their eyes were opened up. And all of a sudden, they were attracted to the Gashmias, the physical world, which before had not had any kind of attraction at all, because they went such a high roughness of the plane that they were surrounded with light, and they barely saw the Gashmias. And now all of a sudden, they were presented with this extremely strong attraction, which they were not actually in a position to be able to fight. And they fell very far, very fast. So what are the implications of this for us? We just entered that question. First of all, I think it's important to understand that the whole issue of creator and creation is really at the center of existence. Because if you really think about it, and we should think about it, the fact that Hashem exists, first of all, we know that we cannot exist without Hashem, because if there was no Hashem, then it would implicate that it would and if we did exist and Hashem didn't exist, then how do we get here? Because we know we didn't create ourselves, so therefore we have to have a creator that put us here. So therefore, the very fact, if we accept that we actually do exist, then the creator must exist. On the other hand, if he doesn't exist, right, so then I don't exist either. So, and if I do exist, then he must exist. So in a sense, we kind of validate each other. There's the fact that Hashem exists makes it possible for me to exist, and the fact that I exist means that Hashem must exist. So it's a tautology, whatever. It's a way of verifying and realizing that on the most basic level that we acknowledge Hashem's existence through our own existence.
Yeah, but there are many people that feel that yeah.
There are people that choose to be irrational, but I don't take responsibility for that.
We're the ones that are basing ourselves on Muna.
It's emunah to say that you exist at all. It could be that we don't exist and we just think we exist, or we just think therefore I am, and all those philosophical things. But the point is that it makes sense. Let's put it that way. And it's the simplest solution. You have to kind of bend over backwards to deny it, and that's why it was always assumed. There was a whole concept of atheism and a philosophy which denies the existence of a creator was a relatively recent invention. That's not something that was always a problem. It's pretty obvious to everybody that there was a creator. There's a lot of other evidence for the creator as well. I'm not just talking about this. The fact that a creator creates with an agenda, with a program, with a way of organizing things. And when you see a creation that has order and has purpose and has meaning, then that also implies the existence of something that created it, as opposed to just happening by itself somehow, which would seem to indicate that things would not fit together so well, or be so incredibly beautiful and meaningful and brilliant in terms of the genius going into it. The fact that modern philosophers or scientists or whatever can try to deny that, they have to go through all kinds of contortions and bending over backwards again to try to deny it, because it's something that seems to be so obvious that you just can't. It's very difficult to figure out how not to accept it. But in any case, I'm not here to talk about philosophy so much. I'm talking more about on the contrary, I'm talking about experience. I'm talking about the immediacy of the experience of living, is that we are constantly presented, even through as basic a thing as our own existence, that Hashem is here. And if Hashem is here, then you can take a couple different approaches. You can say Hashem put us here and then left. He forgot about us. He's not involved anymore. And some people do take that approach, and then they're on their own. They have to figure it out on their own. But obviously, Yiddishkeit does not say that, and we feel that we are constantly being presented with evidence of Hashem's interaction with us, and that's the whole concept of hashkafah protest, that we see Hashem's involvement in our daily lives, in history, and his relationship with people, and all of this. So it's obvious that there is, in other words, a person can go through life and they can maintain a distance. They can, I'm here and my creator is over there somewhere, and we kind of peacefully coexist. We don't, try not to get on each other's nerves too much. It's like we're not really, I'm not looking to be too involved with him, and I don't see that he's looking to be too involved with me, and then we maintain that kind of distance. Or a person can take the opposite approach. They can be on the wavelength where they want to maximize the relationship, and they realize that their entire the fabric of their lives, the very fact that they are what they're involved with is so intertwined with the Creator, with Hashem, and his directives. The very fact they gave us the Torah is an obvious desire on his part to be involved with us and to be involved in giving us direction, which will allow us to have that relationship with him, and that reciprocity, what do you want to call it, and so that we can together work to build the world the way he originally envisioned it. And the fact is that he set it up with a very specific structure. And by setting it up that way, he gave us the Torah in order to show us how to use it to its maximum in the way that it was intended, to create a type of ultimate world which will make use of all that capability that he built into it to begin with. So it's a very big problem when a person tries to create his own version of the world. He tries to figure out his own philosophy or figure out his own type of behavior, and without being really aware of how the world is designed. Because if it is designed for a specific purpose, and he tries to figure out his own purpose without really understanding how it's designed, then most likely he's going to work at cross purposes. Not only is he not going to use out all that's in creation to its maximum advantage, but he's not going to interact with the will of Hashem, which is the first thing, that Hashem has a will, has a desire that it should be a certain way. And he's very likely going to really mess things up because he doesn't understand himself well enough, and he doesn't understand his relationship with everything else, and he doesn't understand how everything's really put together, unless he goes to the Torah to get Hashem's information that he's taught us about how things are constructed. And then he has a chance to, and the instruction book, which is the guidebook, the manual, which is the Torah itself, which says do this and don't do this, and how we should structure life. So that's makes sense. Okay, so in terms of the some of the things I may say may sound a little bit extreme because I'm dealing here with ultimate questions and essential types of things about reality. I'm not looking at, you can get a heter to do this, and you can, find a way to get around a certain thing, or in order to do this, and, I can't handle this, so therefore I have to find, some kind of a dispensation so that I should be allowed to do what I think I'm capable of doing. I'm not dealing with that. That's halachic, problems. Those are things you go to Rav to ask shilas about and stuff like that. That's our individual in relationship with halacha itself. What I'm talking about is that there's a whole level of living which goes beyond just straight halacha, black and white. It's yes or no, clear cut stuff. I'm saying that the subject itself, which is talking about how we can emulate, resemble, try to aspire to do what Hashem really wants us to do, and also to be as much like him as possible, to reflect who he is and how he set us up and who we are in an essential sense. We're going to go into all kinds of things that are not dependent on halacha itself. And that's why the whole shaila of what went on with the Chet Eitz Hadas is so important. I mean, there they did have a very specific, clear-cut directive. Don't eat from the fruit, and they ate from the fruit. So there's nothing more clear-cut than that. Directly from the mouth of the Shem, so to speak, totally direct. But what we have to worry about is that when we start to look at the creation as a creation, then we have to look at our own desire to create. Then we have to worry about all kinds of things that are not specifically related to yes or no, do this or don't do this, fulfill my will in this thing or that thing. And specifically, I'll give you one specific example. There is something in the world called entertainment, various forms of art, the arts, that kind of thing. Okay, now nobody's going to say that this type of stuff is essential for survival. You don't have to have it, but on various levels, there's also styles, styles of dress and styles of all kinds of things. And these are the aesthetics. They're the extra things that make our lives pleasant, and we enjoy them. And some people are really, really into these things, obsessed with them. And there's all kinds of reasons why we want to have that level in our lives. But at the same time, to some extent, the Torah does say, put down guidelines like this is allowed and this is not allowed. Okay, definitely certain guidelines that are there. But there's a lot that's not said specifically. And what that allows for is that our information, this is also part of the whole structure, our information about what the world is based on our senses, right? So what we see and what we hear, we're going to go into this idea of where these senses connect with everything. But that's where we're getting our information. And if we see something that we like, that somehow it, for whatever reason, and everybody has their own reasons, but things connect with us in a certain way that we like this and we don't like this, right? And this attracts us and this may not attract us. Okay, the question is, are we really justified in going after something, a certain experience or whatever it is, just because it attracts us? Because when we look at the whole Eitz Hadas, that was involved with a question of attraction. That was something that was not specifically an intellectual thing. And it certainly opened up a whole, Pandora's box of desires and things like that. So the question is whether just because something looks good to us, are we allowed to participate in it? I'll break this down in a very specific way. We look at celebrities or big artists or something like that, and there are all kinds of almost godlike status given to these people. They're the stars, they're the idols. What's an idol? Idol's a god. Okay, why do they call them an idol? So because they are creators. And the fact is that, people like Gustav Mahler, when he wrote a symphony, called it, he's creating a world. When a novelist writes a novel, he's creating a world. When a director or writer makes a movie, they're creating a world. They're not just, that is a representation of reality on a certain level, even if it's like science fiction, something where it's something that doesn't seem to have much connection with the real world as we know it, as we experience it, but it's creating a fantasy world that's still something that that the whole power of it is that you're getting into it and you're almost believing, there's this whole thing of suspended belief that you're actually allowing yourself to get into it and be emotionally affected by it because you're attributing it a certain reality status. And the very fact that it can involve us emotionally and to some extent intellectually, there are things like this that have influenced ideas, have influenced people. Some things have been very influential in the course of history with this kind of thing that has really made people move in a certain direction. And that means that we are attributing to this something, and we're enjoying it, that is something that was created by a person. Okay. So then we have to understand if this is on the level of a world, and we're allowing it to affect us, to have some influence over us, then if it is in some way other than Hashem's world, or if it's in any way promoting some agenda or some kind of behavior or some kind of belief system or some kind of whatever that's not 100% in alignment with Hashem's system, then how are we allowed to do that? Because if they are a creator and they are setting themselves as opposed to the creator, then they are another creator. And if they're another creator, that's called an avodah zura. And it's avodah zura is also b'hanua. Avodah zura is also b'hanua. That means you're not allowed to take pleasure in an aspect of avodah zura. It's there's certain categories of things which not only are not allowed to sell them or something. We're not allowed to even have any pleasure from it. Why? Because pleasure is something that affects us, and also pleasure is something that why do we make? There's a whole category of halachas called birchas hanahenen, talking about the brachas that we make on various things, not only food but a bunch of things that we have hanah from, that we have some kind of pleasure from. So what does it mean? And we say that if we have pleasure from those things without making the bracha, it's as if we stole it, right? It doesn't really belong to us because we're kind of asking for permission in a sense, and Hashem is saying, fine, I want you to enjoy that, but acknowledge me, for it. I'm the one who put it there. I'm giving it to you. This is one of my ways of interacting with you by giving you something that I know that you like and that I want you to have pleasure from, in order that you should recognize that this is coming from me and that I really love you and I want to give you good things. Hashem is a toy native like toy. If you really look into the lashon of the benching of the Birchos Amos, you will. So many people just say it without really thinking about the words, but it tells us so much about Hashem, who He is, and how much He wants to give us the benefit of enjoying His creations. But we have to acknowledge that as being the case. So if we are having pleasure from some alternative creation that may or may not, be in line with His creation, and we're not acknowledging Him for it for sure, we may even be desiring to connect with that on whatever level, and without even thinking about it, how it's affecting us. It could be a major problem. So a person who's conscientious and he really feels that Hashem is watching him and looking at his actions, and he wants to maximize his interaction with Hashem. He has to seriously, consider himself: should I be taking part in this particular experience, even if it's mutter lahalocha, if it's not what Hashem wants, if it's not in line with Hashem's desire for this whole experience. So,
If it's mutter halakha, why would Hashem not want to do it?
Okay, that's really an important point. Hashem there's mitter and also is mitter means that you are allowed to do it without being over a specific halacha, but it doesn't mean it's recommended. It doesn't mean He's saying this is a mitzvah. It just means it's not bad enough for it to get punished for it, right? But there are lots of things that are mitzvah. I mean, there's a whole thing. Exactly. Person can do all kinds of things and get away with it al pi halacha, and it's totally not what Hashem wants. But Hashem is giving us that leeway. He's saying, I'm not going to get down on you to that extent. I'm going to only ask for the major things that I think you really have to worry about. But the other things, I mean, if you ask a Rav, should I go to this particular movie or something like that, he'll probably say, no, not a good idea. But it's not also, this kind of thing. But I say it's even more than that. I mean, again, this is my position, but it's to participate in the Goyish culture, which is based on values which are totally, in most cases, the opposite of Jewish values. And we just think, well, it's okay. It's not also. I mean, what the whole issue of clothing, of chassidic clothing, particularly, an issue by women. All right, there are lots of ways to get away with things al pi halacha, depending on which Rav you ask, and they're in no way something that Hashem is going to have knots from wearing those kinds of clothing, right? And if you really ask yourself, where is it coming from? This desire to wear these things. There's usually a little bit of guilt involved. Like, can I get away with this? Is this really, how are the people going to look at it? It's like a person knows inside themselves that it's something that, maybe we should look askance at, but there's a very strong desire. There's a strong attraction to such things. So we have to evaluate. And again, the whole idea of what happened in the Eitz Hadas, which is really important. There is the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Torah. Each of them are basically advisors. They are giving us advice, right? The Nachash gave Chava advice. He's saying, do this, you won't regret it. You're not gonna die from it. You're gonna gain all kinds of other stuff from it that you're gonna like. So just do it. You're not you'll thank me for it, right? And it wasn't good advice. so and as opposed to the Yetzer Torah is giving us advice to do things al pi Torah, but sometimes it's not what we want to hear. So we'll ignore it, or we'll steer away from it, and we'll go towards the other side, because it's a question of who you're listening to. So you have a voice inside yourself saying, I really want to do this, but I know that I shouldn't do it. But but on the other hand, and you have this whole shakla inside your head, deciding whether you should do it or you shouldn't do it. But then you say to yourself, well, it's mutter, I can get away with it. It's not also, so why not? you know. So then, but that's not the point. The point is, who are you listening to? Who gave you this idea to begin with? Where is it coming from? So you think back in your head, should I eat this? Should I go there? Should I, all these kinds of questions. It's like day by day, everybody is has to deal with these questions. It's a real problem, but it's an idea that we are, if you want to really take responsibility, and you realize that again that Hashem does notice these things. It's not, nothing gets by him. It's not like something goes unnoticed and just under the radar and just didn't get picked up. I mean, there's nothing like that. So because Hashem's watching us every single minute, and we want Hashem to watch us because we want protection. We want to listen to our prayers and everything else, and all kinds of reasons why we want Hashem to notice us. And then for the things that we aren't so proud of doing, we don't want him to notice us. And of course, for anything the person does, they can do tshuva, and that's right there up front. If you make a mistake, do tshuva right away, and Hashem forgives you for it. So it's not like you do anything that's irreparable. Obviously, hurt somebody else, that's then you have to go ask forgiveness from him. But the point is that it's a question of responsibility. If we even want to go to this level, but there's a very big benefit of dealing with life on this level. Because when you decide that you're going to make the commitment to really consider how Hashem looks at this and where these different impulses and desires and things are coming from, you, at a certain point, you pass a certain threshold, and then you are really connecting with Hashem. And that's a very, very big thing. That's a kind of, many people for years and years and years and years are fighting. They're fighting themselves. They're fighting Hashem. It's a constant struggle. Once you surrender to Hashem, you say, you know what? I really want to do what you want me to do. That's the major thing in my life. And I really want to understand what you really want from me. And then all of a sudden, everything opens up, because all of a sudden you're instead of being afraid to confront what the world really is, you start to discover what the world really is. And it's amazing. And the way that we can, and when you understand the relationship that we have with Hashem, and why he put us here to begin with, and because of the potential that can create, you're not going to get there if you're still busy, fighting around with yourself. Should I do this or shouldn't I do this? Or this thing that's marginal, that's like on the borderline. Should I allow myself to do that or not? It's all counterproductive. It's just preventing you from unlocking that potential. And everything in life, we're talking especially about the idea of being creative, is the concept of nekoyach elapoyah. You're taking our whole goal here is to take something from potential into reality. And when we're the ones who are taking the potential into reality, then Hashem gives us credit for it. Then he gives us schar. He gives us the rewards for that. And one of the biggest rewards is just feeling like, I did this together with Hashem, basically. This is what happens when we cooperate.
But why I go is take something from potential to reality.
Okay, because if everything is if you're only dealing with reality and what's already reality, then where do we fit in? Hashem is saying, look, I set up things that it's possible to create this kind of a world, but it's not there yet. And why? Okay, so on one level, you can say the world originally was supposed to be like that. It got messed up. We had the Kalim and all this stuff. Before creation of the world, and we had the Tzadas and all this stuff. So the kind of world that Hashem wanted to create to begin with, we can say, or the way it was supposed to be to begin with, didn't work because it didn't have our participation. In order for it to work, we have to be involved. Hashem has to engage us to do it. And the whole basis of Chava Oynish is that we are doing it, that we're doing it. He's putting it in our hands. He wants us to do it. So if he wants us to do it, that means it's not done yet. That means it's only in potential. He built into the creation itself that it could be like this. But how is it going to get there? You got to do it. So I'm the one now who has to make that potential into reality because of what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden I get credit for it. Now it's mine. Now it's something that we did together. He created the potential, and I put it into reality. But that's because I wanted it, because I did, and I made a certain nefesh, and I worked on it, and I put koiches into it, and everything else. And then every drop of that effort that I put into making that potential into reality becomes mine, and that's my style of the makom. That's what I'm drawing from. Is what I put in according to what Hashem wanted me to do. And I said, yes, I'm going to really try. And look at now what's going on in the war, and you see people, soldiers, people coming from out of the country and coming into the country because they want to fight and they want to be a soldier in the war, and they want to be part of this war, and nobody even forced them to come, right? They're doing that on their own, totally. So those people it's a different kind of soldier. It's a person who mamish is there because he 100% wants to be there. It's not like some draftee that's the draft dodger or whatever that forced them, drag them into the war, and you have to do this. It's total 100%. Their roots, they're part of this. So the question is, did Hashem just draft us into Mishon Torah mitzvahs? Was something we were born into, we had to accept it. That is one of the biggest, zechissim of Gerim and Bali Tshuva, that they chose to do this, and halavai, they should have the same, passion for serving Hashem when they get into it for a few years as they had to begin with, when they started out. But the fact is, the very fact that they started themselves and they weren't forced into it is a tremendous chiss. Tremendous chiss. One of the reasons why they say that Tshuva is on a level that tzaddik tzaddik Gomer is not on that level. The tzaddik Gomer is born into it, and they didn't have a choice. And they took it on. Obviously, they're running with it, but it's not because they came from the opposite. They had to throw away so many other things in order to be able to come to this. That's an amazing spice. But again, it has to do with ritzim. Are you really there 100% or not? So of course, the downside of that is that a person who's brought up in a different environment and had to give it up still has a certain kesher. They tasted that. So there are things that have a hold on them. They want to bring that back. But the idea is that is their whole schis. The whole schis is that they tasted it and they liked it and they threw it away. They divorced themselves from it. They mamash, were willing to separate themselves from that. That's their whole schis, and which the tzaddik doesn't have. Tzaddik because they never tasted it, so they don't know what it's like. They're curious, maybe they have to fight the curiosity, but they didn't grow up with it. So for a person to say, well, it's so hard for me to give up certain things that I was brought up with. So realize, yes, it's hard for you. That's your whole schus. Halavad should be very hard for you. now look at all the credit you get, because that's how you can't get that credit because they didn't experience the big one. All right. So anyway, so this whole thing about this the Chet Eitzadas then has a lot to do with choices. The whole thing's to do with choices. That's the whole idea of the Chira. And choices are more than just yes or no, mutter aser. That is the reason, by the way, why tzaddikim, they say they're judged kechut asada, like on a hair's breadth, right? And all kinds of they say that the all discussions about David HaMelech and the Averis that it looks like he did, and we say no, they really weren't Averis because Al Pidin he really wasn't Aver, but still is considered to be an Avera, and he suffered very much for it. But why? Because it wasn't really an Avera, So this is very poshut then. On his level, he had to make a choice. And he was expected. It was an asoyan. It was a test on his level, and he was being tested dafka on that thing because on his level, this was a choice between right and wrong. This was between following Hashem and not following Hashem, and he messed up, and he got punished for it. But that's David HaMelech on his level. So every tzaddik is on his level, he still has to make a choice of right and wrong. Or maybe even on his level, it would be expected that he would go, 100% overboard, and he only went 50% overboard, in terms of mamish wanting to do extra. And if he didn't, then he's not living up to his expectations. So then it's like in the stock market, they have certain expectations for a stock. So they say, so if their expectation is that it's going to make 100 million and only makes 50 million, So a lot of businessmen would be very happy with that. But because this stock was expected to make 100 million, the stock goes down. The prices go down, right? Because it was expected to do much, much better. So even if it does make money, but it's not as much money as was expected, the value goes down. So this is tzaddikim are like on that level. Each one of us has our own specific, tailor-made, custom design challenges and tests and all these things, because that is only a test for us. It's not a test for somebody else. Somebody else would have have a hard time with that. But we have a hard time with it because of all the things that we're facing. So that's why it's hard for us, and that's why we're being judged on the basis of our performance on that. And when we talk about being judged, by the way, specifically on this topic, but when you talk about being judged, judging, life is made of challenges and tests. And the whole idea is that just like when you take a test, for a course. So the test is to determine whether you really know the material or not. And that's the only way that you can be challenged. First of all, it's a challenge to prepare for the test. Nobody likes tests, but you have to do it in order to go to the next level. So if you don't pass that test, then you can't go to the next level. And it wouldn't be good for you to go to the next level, because if you go to the next level before you're really ready for it, then you're going to mess up over there and you're going to fall even further. So the idea is when Hashem gives us a test, a particular midah, or a particular, whatever it is, whatever the challenge is, it's not good for us to pass the test until we're ready for it, right? So sometimes we have to go through the same test multiple times, because it's very important that we really master that particular quality or whatever it is before we go to the next level. So it's all for our benefit. It's all planned just in order that we should be able to advance to the next stage. Okay, so that's just important point to understand. Okay. What?
It's very challenging to know, because in your heart you could say, well, I really probably shouldn't be doing this thing. On the other hand, it might be at that point in time it's actually really what you do,
Right, and so Hashem is saying, yeah. This is, I never said it was easy. I never said it was easy. This is what life was made of, and everybody has to make those cheshbonos and those calculations. But at the same time, we have to realize, as I just said, every time you face a test, which means I have to make a decision: am I ready for this? Am I going to do this or not? Should I give in? Should I not give in? Should I, go? This is a little test, and the test is intended for us to decide, do we want to go to the next level or not? Do we want to now progress? Because if a person is basically just trying to keep the status quo, don't rock the boat, don't do anything that's too hard, because I might fall apart, whatever. It's like you're just holding yourself back, and Hashem is trying to always prod you to go higher, because that's growth. That's what life is about. It's all about going up. We talk about the movement. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's in line with what we're talking about. Okay. So I passed out these things last week, but there's something called the Shir Koima. At least that's in the Lashon of the Ramak. Talks about the idea of Shir Koima. And Shir Koima is a structure. There's a this goes very, very deep, and it's something. But the nice thing about it is that you can see it like right away. It's not hard to understand. We have very little time, so we'll just go to the subject. The structure of the Bria is a couple, and this is essential to understand if you're talking about anything created, because again, we're working with the structure that Hashem has set up. And that again is a very important point. You can't make it up. You can't see things the way you want. It's Hashem set it up a certain way. And if we see it the way the Torah sees it, then everything in the Torah makes sense, because it's all centered around the same assumptions and same understandings. Okay, first of all, there's a very important concept called Lamala Lamata and Lamata Lamala. So idea there are things that can be looked at as going from lower to higher, and there are other things that are looked at as going from higher to lower. And then there's a cycle where there are things that go up and then it goes down, and it goes back up again, and it goes back down again. So without understanding there's a certain hierarchy, things are going up or going down, we can't understand how these things work. Now, going up and down does not mean better or worse. It's very important to understand. In certain areas, the things that are lower are more chashiv, so to speak, than the things that are higher. So we have to understand what is really, it's more of a functional thing. Everything's important. Everything in the world, everything in the whole Bria, the whole creation is, you could say in a sense, is equally important, because without any aspect, if you're missing any of those aspects, the whole thing doesn't work. Just like a sacred Torah, if one os is puzzle, one letter is puzzle, the whole thing's not kosher, can't use it. So there is nothing extra. And the Ramak, who basically is set up a lot of this understanding, he says in his other swarm that you are not allowed to touch the least bria, the smallest bria, the ant. Don't kill an ant. Don't do anything that's not absolutely necessary. Certain things you're allowed to do, and you have a priority because you're the daber, you're on the top of the level of life, but you have to be very, very conscious and careful about not disturbing anything else in the bria, because your role is to build the bria, to make it better and to make it greater and to push it forward, not to chassidic damage something. So that's this whole idea of our moral decisions. I mean, if you think about it in those terms, you can think of the fact that we are the only ones with the Torah. Hashem gave the Torah exclusively to the Yidden. Why? Because that foundation of the chiyus, of the whole energy flow of the entire bria is based on our following the Torah. So therefore, you can imagine how essential it is that we be conscious of the level of that responsibility, so that we're careful. We're careful what we do. We can't just do what we want, do what we feel like. That's the whole basis of being Shem Torah mitzvahs. You cannot just relax and let yourself do what you want. There are structures to this. A person has to know, if they really understand themselves, if they're really required to understand themselves, of what I really need and what I just desire, and making distinctions. And this is this whole idea of the Gemara. We learn Gemara, and Gemara is all about making distinctions. Last time we talked about this Havdalah, Havdalah is the middle one. How do we make distinctions? How do you make decisions? So the whole thing about after going through the Chet Eitzadas is to know that the whole thing is about making decisions and how we make decisions, and how do we analyze things, and how do we break things down. So once you break things down, you can make an intelligent decision. That's what the Chira is about. So how can you have the Chira if you don't have Das, if you don't know what's going on? So once you understand things that are going on, and you have a system and a basis on which to make decisions, then you can make an intelligent decision. Otherwise, it's just a shot in the dark. So a person has to be conscious of that, and they have to be conscious of their responsibility in the world. That Hashem gave us this mission, and we have to take it seriously. And if we just think that we can just wing it, then at least if a person has that kind of attitude, they should not have any kindness on Hashem if something goes wrong. And unfortunately, a lot of people are the most that way, that they're the people that are the least interested in taking responsibility for what they're doing. And then when something goes wrong, the first one to blame is Hashem. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so we're going to now once we get this chart down, obviously I'm not going to do it in the next 3 minutes, but once you understand the intricacies of this chart, you'll understand how everything is so interlocking on every level, and how every level is corresponding to the level above it and below it. And the fact is that because we are on the bottom, we influence everything above us. So that's the whole Bria in terms of all of the levels. The Bria is multi-level, and and we're on the lowest level, and everything's built on us. We're like the foundation level. And because we're on the bottom, that gives us the power to be able to affect everything above us. Everything is like waiting for us. It's depending on us. It's expecting us, because everything higher than us knows that they can't succeed, that they can't, function optimally unless we're doing what we're supposed to do down here. Now, again, I'm only talking about this. I know for a person who's not really been exposed to this with this intensity, so to speak, they could get scared, because it sounds scary. Like, what are you giving me so much responsibility for? But if I wouldn't express it in these terms and with this kind of intensity, then I would not be doing it justice. Because this is what the Yidden acquired when they stood on Har Sinai. We talk, what is Shavuos about? What is the idea of Kabbalah Torah about? Why was it so earth-shaking? Why was it so cataclysmic? Like the whole Bria, the world was based on this. And Hashem said, if you don't accept the Torah, I'm going to put it back to Torah void, put it back to nothingness. Why? Because everything was dependent on us being the Kabbalah, the Torah, and taking it up on this responsibility, this covenant forever, that we are locked into this relationship with Hashem. And this is what it's about. It's nothing less than this. This is like, the minimum that you can say about it. I can say a lot more about it, but this is just the starting point. So again, and because of this is how the Torah is locked into the Bria, the entirety of creation, and this is how we can aspire to the level of a partner with Hashem in creation by beginning to understand what this is about and how we can help Hashem to make it a reality.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. That was
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you so much for everything, and I wanted to say that I was